This episode is brought to you by Polestar. There's only one true way to experience the all-electric luxury SUV Polestar 3, and that's to take a test drive. It can go from 0 to 60 in as little as 4.8 seconds with the dynamic handling of a sports car. But to truly understand how it commands the road, you need to be behind the wheel. Up to 350 miles of range, the 3D surround sound system by Bowers & Wilkins. It's all something you have to experience to believe. So book your test drive for Polestar 3 today at polestar.com.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. The Air Force Research Laboratory is partnering with Google Cloud using AI to accelerate defense research for air, space, and cyberspace forces. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
Hello, you are tuned in to Women's Running Stories. This is Cherie Louise Turner. I am the host and producer of this podcast. And this week, I'm bringing back a past episode. It features ultra runner Wynonna Fulgham, who tells the story of discovering the life-changing impact of running long distances on the trails. A little update since this episode aired in September of last year, 2024, is that Wynonna went on to complete her first 100-miler, and then, just a couple months ago, in May of 2025, she completed the Cocodona 250, an astonishing 250 miles through intense conditions. I am in total awe of Wynonna's story. And if you haven't heard it before, you are absolutely in for a real treat. And if you have, it's worth a re-listen. Yeah, her story is, it's really good. And in the introduction to Wynonna's story, you're going to hear me mention that there's a live conversation coming up at the Chicago Marathon featuring the team of Native Women Run, along with Native Women Run founder Verna Volker. It was a conversation I co-hosted with Cindy Kuzma of the Starting Line 1928 podcast just this last October. And we recorded that conversation. We put it out as a podcast episode. And so I will link to that episode in the show notes. It was a great conversation, so go have a listen to that as well. Also, I am posting this episode REAIR because I've been working on another project that we just got to announce yesterday. I'm the producer, and I am over the moon to be producing the new podcast Earth Movers with Allison Mariella Desir, Stephanie Flippen, and Verna Nesbegay Volker. The podcast will be launching on August 14th. It is a trail podcast that will be reclaiming the narrative. It is hosted by women of color, and it will be centering people of color. And it is welcome to all to listen to. You can expect great conversations among the hosts, and there will also be interviews with special guests. You can learn more about Earth Movers now and keep up to date with news and information about the podcast over on Instagram. We just launched that account, and it is at Earth Movers Podcast. So please go over there, follow, like, share, comment, get the word out. I really, really appreciate it. Again, we are now on Instagram at Earth Movers Podcast, and the podcast itself will launch on August 14th. So that has been a project that we have been working on for many months now, and finally we got to make the public announcement about it. So that's been very, very exciting. Back to Women's Running Stories. I do have new episodes in the works. They're in production. So next week, you can expect a new episode on Women's Running Stories. It'll post on Tuesday. And until then, please enjoy Wynonna's running story. And I do wish you healthy, joyful strides forward. Now on to the episode. You are listening to Women's Running Stories, where exceptional women runners share inspirational stories about their running experiences.
Okay, so I'm Wynonna Fulgham, de Bethla Janejla, Todich Ini Bashashin, Tatnezati Dashache, Kiani Dashanella. And in my Dinek culture, Navajo culture, that's how we always introduce ourselves to, I guess, form kinship. Like if we have relatives, we can identify ourselves as either auntie, uncle, grandma, grandpa. But that's just like culturally, like how we always introduce ourselves.
Yes, in this episode, you're going to hear the running story of Wynonna Fulgham, who has discovered the deeply transformative power of ultra trail running. But before we hear more from Wynonna, I want to welcome you to Women's Running Stories. I am Cherie Louise Turner. I'm the host and producer of this podcast, and I'm so happy that you are here. Wynonna's story it's really beautiful. But first, I want to let you know that I am going to be co-hosting an event at the Chicago Marathon Expo. Please join me co-hosting with Cindy Kuzma of the Starting Line 1928 podcast. We are going to be in conversation with Native Women Run. We're going to be talking to the founder of Native Women Run, Verna Volker, and the team that is running the Chicago Marathon. Jessica Lewis, Amber Henderson, Angel Tatatin, and Bertie Wormy. It's a live podcast event happening on Saturday, October 12th from 4 to 5 p.m. on the main stage at the Marathon Expo. Please come join us. It is going to be a great conversation. Now on to Wynonna's story. In her running story, Wynonna recounts the major milestones of her trail and ultra running journey up through today, including her 2 experiences at the Transrockies. Transrockies is a multi-day stage running event that takes place in Colorado. There's both a 3-day event and a 6-day event. The 3-day event covers a total of 55 miles, and the 6-day event covers 120 miles. And the stages go over and through the Rocky Mountains, across peaks and at altitude. It is a tough event. Each day, runners face a set number of miles, and in between the stages, they camp. One small note here is you'll hear Wynonna mention her teammates at Transrockies, Nicole and Missy, and that's Nicole Smith and Missy Hendricks. All right, so let's get to it. Let's hear Wynonna's running story, beginning with when she was 12, and she went through her coming-of-age ceremony, which happens with the onset of menstruation. Here to tell her story is Wynonna Fulgham.
Because of my Kinaaldah ceremony, my puberty ceremony, there's a lot of teachings that go into transitioning from a girl to a woman. And within the 4 days that takes place during their ceremony, the young lady is running in the morning before the sun comes up, the afternoon, and the evening. And the running represents, each day represents a different part of their lives. And the young woman is praying and meditating during that time. And in our culture, we are told at very young ages to get up and run towards the east, towards the sun, and pray. And that's to strengthen our spirituality, strengthen our mental sharpness, to strengthen our physical parts of our body. And a lot of the times when we do run to the east, we're praying for our families, for health, goals that we want to achieve. And the running becomes a part of you when you go through that ceremony. It's like a livelihood, because it's such a huge part of that transition from becoming a girl to a woman. The running introduces so many things, like new emotions, like the exhaustion. You don't really feel that as a little girl because parents are doing things for you, but that gets introduced because you're busy all day, but you still have to make time to run and pray and meditate. And you learn how to overcome those feelings. You learn how to acknowledge those feelings, recognize it, and then figure out how do I get through this? I'm tired, but I still have to run. And you kind of build that perseverance, that resilience within you. You build that physical part of yourself, but also the spiritual part of it. And I'm weird. I'm truly a black sheep. That's my clan. And I love having to solve problems. I'm a math teacher. I'm an ultra runner. I love doing things that are challenging, to see what my limits are, to see what I am capable of. And so when I went through my ceremony, it really kind of ignited this passion in me that, not everyone gets to do it, and not everyone has the same teachings or has the same growth from it. We all grow and we all have different teachings, but coming from that ceremony, the foundation of womanhood, building your home, building your perseverance to keep moving forward in life. And I love that about running. And I really felt that was a huge part of my transition from going from girl to womanhood, is learning how to overcome the challenges, obstacles, and persevering. So before the last morning, my last run, we eat, and then everyone gathers in a sacred place, which is the Hogan, and they start singing. So they're singing about your home. They sing about they have a journey song, they have a protection song, they have all these different songs that were passed down from generations. And it's literally singing about your life, like what they want for you. You want a home. If you want children, they sing about children. If you want to be a grandparent, they sing about that. If you want possessions, like a vehicle or a job to be able to provide for your family, that's everything. So they literally are singing they're manifesting that for you. But the girl has to stay up all night. And so you're sitting up all night, and you have to sit proper, straight, with your legs out. There's no laying down, there's no slouching, because you're being molded into the woman you want to be. So if you're slouching, they say that, you're not going to be able to stand up and have a straight posture. And I remember being really, really tired by midnight and just wanting to go to sleep, and I was hungry. And during this time, the 4 days, you have a very strict diet, I would say. I wouldn't know how to describe it, but you're eating natural foods, so foods from the earth. You can't have sugar, you can't have salt, kind of eating like how our ancestors have, corn, meat. And so being hungry, for wanting a donut or something, and because everyone else was being served donuts, and you're watching everyone, and it really is a test of your ability to be able to be disciplined and follow the expectations. And around towards, I would say 3:30, depending on the specific song they get to, they wash your hair in a Navajo basket, and they use yucca plant. So the root of a yucca plant is soap, and they wash your hair with the soap, and they wash your jewelry. They kind of wash your body, mimicking. I mean, you still have your clothes on, but they wipe your jewelry down. They wash your face, your hair. And after they wash you, that's kind of the symbolism of okay, now you're a woman. We're washing the little girl essence off of you. And after they wash your hair, they sing. They stop for a minute, and then the medicine man gives you directions on what you do next, which is run as far as you can to represent your life. You run longer, you will have a long life. And I remember it snowed. For my particular ceremony, it snowed the whole night. And so my mom was asking about my moccasins, because you can't get them wet, otherwise they harden, and it's hard to wear after that. So she asked permission, can she wear her running shoes so that she doesn't slip and so that we don't ruin them? And he said, yeah, that's fine. And I remember changing into my running shoes and thinking, okay, this has to be really intense if I have to change out of my shoes, my moccasins, because you're not allowed to change out of your regalia for 4 days. So you're supposed to wear everything the same. And they were layering me with jackets and, you know, just kind of being in a daze, like trying to wake up, and I'm hungry and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And he said, go. And as soon as he said go, you run, like you run to the east. And I remember stepping out of the hogan and just that cold, like air just filled my lungs. And it was so refreshing because then I was like, okay, now I'm awake. And so I started running and my hair's still wet. And so my hair froze. So my hair sounded like icicles against my back. I remember seeing my breath. It was dark, like kind of like dawn, like when you can see but not see. And so where I lived was in a very rural area, about 5 miles was our nearest neighbor, and we lived in kind of like a canyon. So I had to run up hills, and my dad was worried that I wasn't going to be able to see my trail that I had created the 4 days prior. But I just kind of went off of like memory, like, okay, I remember passing this tree. And then once the sun started to come up a little bit, it started getting really windy. And then I just remember just keep going, don't stop, keep going, don't stop. And I kept running and I kept hearing people behind me, relatives saying, stop, turn around now, stop, turn around. And for me, that was like, they were telling me to stop because they couldn't continue to follow me. So we have family members that follow the young lady, and they try to follow her as far as she can go. But we're not allowed to stop on our run. We're not allowed to turn around until our turning around point where we decide and turn around. And I remember thinking, why are they telling me to turn around now? And I guess they were getting concerned because a storm was coming. And I kept running. And pretty soon I couldn't hear anyone, and I couldn't turn around to see if anyone was behind me. But I kept running because I knew that the longer I ran, the longer I would be able to live and, you know, like kind of represent that like longevity. So I kept running, and then snow started to come down, and it was really, really thick snow where you could barely see a few feet in front of you. And so I kept trying to look for the last tree that I turned around at. And I finally came across, I don't even know how long I was out because, you know, I didn't have a watch that kept track of my miles. I didn't have a watch on. So I don't even know how long I was out there. But I finally turned around and realized that I was by myself, and then tried to follow my foot tracks back and eventually made it back to the hogan, and everyone was relieved that I made it back. I didn't get lost. I didn't fall. And I just remember like my lashes had like frost on it. My hair was ice. But I just remember like walking into that hogan and just being so proud of myself that I made it through that week, that last run, and especially because the weather. And I look back at it and I really do feel that that really is how I get through things. Like I look back at that, I'm like, well, if I was able to do that, I can do anything. And I always revert back to the prayers and the songs that were sung. It just awakens a part of you that I feel like you can only experience if you go through that ceremony. And I think that's a lot of what I've learned, that I found new parts of me that are able to overcome things that, you know, when I go through challenges in life, I always revert back to that. I think about the sacred songs, the mornings I had to get up early when I was super tired, because there is no like, oh, I'll do it later. It's you have to get up and run. You run in the evening, even if you've been working all day. And that last morning, you know, you're tired, you're hungry, sleepy, you just want to run a few miles and turn around and go back. And then you have to stay up the rest of the day until the sun goes down. And to this day, I love running in the snow. I love running in the cold weather just because it brings back those moments of me being out running that last day. And it just is very nostalgic for me. And, I can't help but get emotional and cry about it, just because my parents were able to do that for me, set that foundation for the rest of my life. And I'm able to use that to get through challenges and acknowledge the strength that, was created, my resilience. And I'm always thankful for that, though. I'm always very appreciative and thank my parents for doing that for me. And I really loved how I felt that last morning. And I guess I continue to run because, being a mother of 5, a teacher, a coach, I have those moments where I'm tired, where I'm exhausted, but I feel that I recenter, I reground myself. I find harmony again when I go out and run, connect myself with the land and pray and meditate. So that's a lot of what I've learned from my transition. And that's how I got into running, is just finding that peace within myself. Back in 2015, I had signed up for a 5K, and it would be probably the longest race I've ever entered, because I was a sprinter in high school. And my friend, she mentioned it to me. I was like, oh, that sounds fun. I'll sign up. And I never had been in that type of environment, like the racing world. And I really liked it. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll start training. So I looked up on YouTube, training for runs. And I came across the Barkley Ultra Marathon run. And so I was intrigued. I opened, clicked the video, and I was so locked into that video. And I turned to my husband. I was like, come watch this with me. And he's not a runner at all. And he said, that's crazy. And I was like, I want to do that. And he was like, do what? And I said, I want to run 100 miles. And he was like, well, you can do it. You got to train a lot. And I'm like, yeah, I'm running my first 5K tomorrow, but I want to do that someday. He's like, well, you should start figuring it out and, start training. And that kind of stuck with me in the back of my head. And I know there's certain rules that you have to do for that specifically. But the idea of ultra running, I started looking up different, what is an ultra marathon? I hadn't even run a 10K, a half marathon, or even a marathon. And I'm already thinking of, oh, let's try an ultra. And so I eventually started working my way up, ran my first 10K at the end of 2015. And my mom had came across an ultra marathon that was on the reservation where we're from. And she said, let's run this. And I leapt at, bags were packed, and I said, let's do it. I didn't even ask her how long it was. And she's like, okay, if you want to do it, I'll sign us up. And I'm like, okay, well, how much is it? She's like, well, because we live on the reservation, it's $10 for us. And I said, okay, yeah, I'll send you $10. Sign us up. When she told me the information, I looked it up and I was thinking, what did I get myself into? I can't even 33 miles. We signed up for a 50K. And so we not sure how to exactly train. We just ran every weekend. And now that I think about it, it's a very I cringe at our training and everything. Oh my gosh. So we ran every weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and we were trying to hit 20 miles both Saturday and Sunday every single time. And I didn't strength train. We didn't know anything about how to eat when you train for an ultra marathon, or let alone eat when you're running in a race. But she did find out about, okay, well, I heard about this tailwind. Let's try it. Oh, okay. So we literally had just bags of tailwind in our packs. And, I'm like, I don't know how they can do this. Like, how do they run and not eat, when we're training? And she's like, oh, I found these energy chews. Let's try them. Okay, let's do it. So that's literally what we trained on, was tailwind and energy chews. So we trained for about half a year, and then a race day comes, and we're standing in Monument Valley at the starting line, and I'm just like, I have no idea how I'm going to get through this, but I'm determined to finish. And so we started, and we get to the first aid station, which is about 10 miles in. And it was actually really, really cool and unique because the aid station was in a hogan. And so they had tortillas, they had fry bread, they had Navajo stew, they had Navajo corn stew. And I'm walking in there and I'm like, is this like where we finish? Have these people already finished? Why are they eating these whole meals? And why is this guy like downing soda? I was so confused. And my mom was like, I don't know how they're eating. And so I'm like over here chewing my chews, hungry, and like trying to keep up with my hydration. And so we started our second loop, and then we get back to that same aid station. So there are 10-mile loops that end at, that was the central aid station. And again, I see the same people that after the 10 miles, they're eating fry bread, they're eating tortillas, drinking soda. And I'm just like, maybe I'll try a watermelon. I don't know how it's going to affect me. Like, I just want, and I was like, you know what? At least out of everything here, I think the watermelon might be a good choice. Had a watermelon, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to eat more. And I'm like, oh, there's pretzels. No, I don't know. Like, I'll just stick to my chews. And I'm sitting there like starving, trying to eat as many chews as I can. And I'm waiting for my mom. And, my mom, she was, I think, about 30 minutes behind me. And then we started on our third loop. And that was the toughest because we had to hike up one of the mesas. And I was fine going up. My mom started cramping, so she literally crawled up, and I tried to help her. She's like, no, just go. I was like, okay, I'll wait for you at the top. So then I waited at the top, and then my IT band was acting up, and so I couldn't even bend my leg. So she had to carry me down. Like, not carry me, but I had to put my arm around her shoulder. So she was sore from that. And once I got to the flat areas, though, my leg was fine. It was just climbing down that was difficult. And then we ended up at that same aid station, and I'm like, maybe we should just try something. And my mom was like, well, we don't know like how it's going to affect our bodies. I'm like, yeah, you're right. So again, got our chews. And then I didn't even keep track. Like, did I go to the bathroom? Like, am I hydrating enough? It was so bad. So we ended up heading back. We had 3 miles left, and I started to really feel the effects of not being able, like, not having the proper calories. And I started to feel really weak and heavy. And I'm like, what is this? Like, we trained, probably overtrained. And I was about maybe 400 meters from the finish line, and I had just stopped, and I like cried. And I told my mom, like, I have never ever felt quitting. Like, I don't, like, this feeling is so brand new. I've never quit anything. I've never felt like I needed to just stop and quit. And I cried because I was 400 meters away, and I stopped, and I was like wanting to sit down, and I was like, I can't, this, because we end on a hill. And she poured water on me. She said, pray to the water. And so I prayed to the water, drank some, and I got a little bit of energy back. And then I could hear my kids. Yelling my name. And I don't know, like, something ignited in me, and I just took off. And about, I would say, 20 yards from the finish line, they were both running by me. And it was just like, so empowering to see my, like just have my children watch me cross the finish line, and something that was so hard for me that day, and witness, even though it was difficult, it was challenging, it was hard, like I was able to finish. And when we finished, I cried just because I was so happy I finished in the time limit that I was given. And the motivation to run that was, one, I wanted to experience what an ultra was and felt like. And my mom also said, let's run for MMIW, Missing Murdered Indigenous Women. And I started learning more about that, and we ran for that, for the awareness of that. And that's a lot of like what kept me going too, like just making sure that I'm praying for these women that never made it home, my Native sisters that, are missing. And I think that was the part that was very difficult, that, I felt like I couldn't finish, and I really wanted to. And, and a lot, when my kids were yelling, I could specifically really hear my daughter's voice. And I think that's what kind of like lit that fire in me, because it was a reminder of, my purpose, for the MMIW, and, my daughter, just running for her as well. So in 2023, I had filled out a application through the Native Women Running Organization to run a race that would be sponsored by them. So the registration for the race would be paid for. And I had filled out the registration for a 50K. And I was like, oh, I've ran a 50K, so I can run this, I can complete it. And I have a better idea of how to train. I have a better idea of how to hydrate, keep up with my electrolytes, and the nutrition part I'm a lot better at. And so I was chosen, and something in me just kind of felt like it didn't feel right. Just, I don't know. It was just something that was uneasy in me, that when I chose the 50K, I felt like I needed to do more. And I wasn't sure what that was. So I reached out to Wynonna Volker, the founder of Native Women Running, and I asked her, and I said, would it be okay if I switched to 100K? And she said, it's up to you. And she said, let me know, she gave me a deadline. I was like, okay. And I was back and forth. Am I ready? Have I trained enough? I have this number of days to train. Like, will I have enough time? And then right then and there, like, I started really doubting myself again. And then my husband just said, like, go for a run and, go. I seem to always have like a clear mindset when I go run, and I have like thought it through. So he said, go for a run and go figure it out. And I'm like, okay. So I go for a really long run. And then I started thinking about my Kinaaldah. That last morning they tell you, for the 4 days, you're supposed to run further and further each time, right? So there's not a day where you run the same amount. And for some reason that stuck with me. Like, why am I going to run something that's offered to me, like an amount of the distance that I've already ran? Like, I know I can complete that. I know I'm capable of that. And what kept coming to me is like, do the 100K. And, the reason behind that was to see what I'm capable of. And it was reverting back to pushing myself. I don't know, just something in me was just like, do the 100K. And I always have an intention. I set an intention for a race when I register. Okay, so my first 50K was for MMIW. And what came to me on my run was that I needed to run for the children that never made it home from the boarding schools. I don't know why, but it was just something that resonated with me. And so I said, okay, let's do it. The 100K, I reached out to Wynonna, told her that's what I was going to do. And then again, I'm like, okay, what did I just get myself into? And so I sat down, figured out my training, did some research, tried different foods on my training, figured out what worked for me, was better at electrolytes and hydration. And so my mom and I left for Zion, and I completed the 100K. I came in 9 minutes before the cutoff time, but I was determined to finish. And it was very rewarding in terms of being able to do that for my ancestors, for family members that went through boarding school, and, setting that, connecting with the land and healing those parts of our families, the transgenerational trauma that's passed down from it, and just kind of it ending with me, because I don't want my children and my grandchildren to have to carry that. And it was more of like a healing run than anything. Healing, within families, healing with other families, and talking about it, thinking about it, I feel like is not enough. But to kind of sacrifice, myself and the trails, and, give my all to, Mother Earth and to the spirits, and just pray. And it just felt very, I know it probably doesn't do a lot, but I felt like I've done something to kind of move that energy to where my children won't have to ever experience that, my grandchildren, but also those traumas that are passed down, like the toxicities within families, like that ends with me. And that's what I really wanted that running to be about, was that healing for ancestors, but also moving forward future generations, that they won't have to experience that type of trauma. And then in the Diné culture, a lot of Native cultures, running is medicine. And I feel like that's the way, like, if there's anything that I can do to help, carry my medicine and help others, it's through running, whether it's running and praying or running for healing. That's, my drive, my motivation. So last year, Wynonna had reached out to me and was like, hey, do you want to do this race? It's a 3-day race out in Colorado. And of course, I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. Didn't know what it entailed until after I agreed. And so I looked it up and I was like, husband, guess what I just signed up for? And he was like, what? And I'm like, it's a 3-day race. He's like, okay. I'm like, in Colorado. Okay. And it's in like 3 weeks. What? But I had already been training from the 100K. So it wasn't like I'm going in it like just no training at all. So that's how I ended up going, was because they needed an extra person, because the original lady that was chosen, she wasn't able to go. So she needed someone to fill that spot, because otherwise we would lose that registration. So I agreed. And I really didn't know what to expect. I tried to research. It kind of made sense to me. I didn't know what stage running was. I knew that I ran a specific amount of days, a certain amount of miles for a certain amount of days. And then we went camping. I'm like, okay, those are all things I love to do, so let's do it. And so we get there, and immediately, like, I loved the energy that I felt, just the community, and how everyone was just so encouraging of one another. And that was my first time being away from my family, my children. And it was tough, because Not that I didn't trust my husband. I knew he would do very well, but I do a lot at the house. I do the pickups, the drop-offs, the run to practice, the sports. I'm like, will you be okay doing that? And he's like, yeah, just don't worry about us. You go do what you need to do. I'll handle everything here. And I'm like, well, maybe, maybe you need help. And he's like, no, go. And I'm like, okay. And I was trying to make every excuse not to go, just because I was kind of feeling that mom guilt, like, well, maybe I shouldn't. I'm going to be away from the kids. Maybe they'll miss me. And he's like, no, they'll be fine. You just need to go. And so I left, and I didn't know my two other teammates. So I wasn't sure what to expect as far as like, am I going to feel like I'm alone out there? Or, like, are we going to feel like, are we going to stay together? I just didn't know what to expect. But when I got there, Nicole and Missy were very welcoming. It was Missy's first time. Nicole, that was her second time. And, we just bonded really well and quickly. And I tease them all the time. I tease Missy especially. Like, I've actually found my people. Like, we are all here, crazy and willing to run 6 days, 3 days in a row. Like, these are my people. And so when I got there, I had set intentions each day, a different reason why I ran for each day. And a lot of it had to do with family, where I was personally in my life, healing some parts of me that I didn't want to no longer hold on to. I prayed for, growing as a person, as a mom, as a wife, professionally, and just no longer holding on to a lot of things that didn't serve me. And because I was able to be away from family and not have to be mom or be wife or run around and, do mom things or even work, it was a lot of finding out who I was, like my identity is not as a mom, not as a wife, not as a teacher. And it was very difficult that first day because I couldn't pinpoint exactly who I was without naming myself as a mom or a wife or a teacher. And it was very emotionally draining for me that day, just because it was like, well, I don't know who I am. And I think being away from family, as much as I didn't want to, really helped, because I was able to just focus on myself. I didn't have to worry about feeding people or being at a certain time. It was literally just getting up, getting ready, doing what I love and have a passion for, and run, come back, eat, relax, recover, rest. And it was just like kind of, I don't even know how to explain it, but it was very healing for me. It was very awakening. And by the third day, it was like, I'm going to miss this, but I also miss my family, and I knew at that moment that this is what I need to continue to do, is find out who I am, identify who I am. And that was the start of it, was last year's Transrockies. And Missy and I manifested. We literally said, we need to come back next year for the 6th day. And that's it. That's how we left it. And Verna reached out to me this year and asked if I wanted to lead the team this year. And I said, my bags are packed. Like, let me know. Like, let's go. And she said, okay, well, I'll let you know. We have the registration out for ladies to fill out, and I'll let you know who we're picking. And we have 2 spots. So there's 3 of you going again this year. I was like, okay. And within like a week or 2, she calls me and says, guess what? And I was like, what? She's like, I just got sponsors, or I got a sponsor that's willing to pay 2 registrations for the 6th day. And my heart just just burst out of my chest. And I'm like hoping that she would say, like, do you want to go? And she said, I know I probably don't have to ask you this, but would you want to do the 6-day? And I said, my bags are packed. Like yes, let's do this. And then she said, she asked, well, these are the ladies that filled out. She named a few ladies, 4 other ladies that signed up in that registration. And she said, out of these 4, who do you think would be willing to do the 6-day? And she mentioned Missy's name. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know she registered. And I said, Missy, I said, we actually manifested this last year. And she laughed and she said, okay, I'll let her know and I'll ask her. And she said that this works out so perfectly because with all of the ladies, the 4 ladies that signed up, 2 of you will be doing the 6-day and the other 3 will be doing the 3-day. So everyone that registered or applied to run it were able to run it. And I was just overjoyed, super excited for everyone. I was mostly excited for, of course, that I was going to do the 6-day, but also that these other women were going to be able to experience this, like whatever they take from it, I know it would be life-changing, and because it was for me. And I could not wait to, talk to the team and just kind of get them familiarized with like what to expect. And this year's 6-day was again another life-changing, it was life-changing for me. We had dropped off my oldest son in college a week before I had to leave, and that has been one of my biggest struggle. I had him when I was 18, and I was a young mom, so he literally grew up with my husband and I. And to know that I had a son leaving for college and was 18, like, it's one of those things that might be small to some people, but for me it was huge because I was told that I was another teen statistic, and the fact that I was able to get my college degrees and raise a family and my son successfully going off to college, was a huge accomplishment, not for me, but for our family. And I'm just so proud of us. I'm so proud of him. But it was so tough dropping him off and driving away. Like it was very, very like, I know I'm not supposed to leave my son, but why am I leaving him? The 8-hour drive home from his college was very long. I cried the entire time. And so I made that about another transition in my life, the 6-day, because it was as soon as we dropped him off, we came back late Sunday, then it was like, okay, now we got to start work again, go back into the routine of things. So it wasn't like I gave myself time to process everything, time to feel everything, time to release. And it was just stuffed back in Monday and then just kind of go through the week. And then that weekend was when I left for Colorado. And I knew that was what I needed to do, was allow myself that transition, allow myself to feel, allow myself to grieve his childhood. And that's exactly what I did. That first day, oddly enough, was 18 miles. I prayed for his 18 years of his precious life, that I was his mama when he was under our home and under our roof. And it was very emotional, but very needed. Just because when I'm home here, I have 4 other babies, my 4 other children, and I have to be here for them too. And this allowed me to be out in the mountains doing what I love to do, and allow me to feel, allow me to be okay with how I was feeling. The grief part I couldn't name it for the longest time. And I was talking to Verna, and she literally said, that's okay, you're grieving his childhood. And I was like, light bulb, that's exactly what this feeling is, because I couldn't name it. I said, there's this ache. I said, it's heartbreak, but it's not. I said, it's just something I've never, ever felt before. And it's frustrating me because I feel like once you name a feeling, you're allowed to be, okay, I named it, I acknowledge it, and now I'm going to release it. But this was just lingering. I couldn't figure it out, and that helped so much. And so that was my transition period. And the 6 days was all about that transition as a mother, having an adult child now. And it was very moving. There was a lot of crying. There was a lot of healing, and just that kind of doubt as well. Like, did I raise him well enough? Is he going to be okay? And mostly just, I don't want him to feel alone. And he's playing football for the college he's at right now. And so, I prayed that, his teammates and him like form that bond that, that allows you to feel welcome. And he came back last weekend, and, his dad and I asked, like, are you happy? He said, I'm happy, Mom. And it was just one of those like feelings that, like, okay, like, as long as you're happy, it was very hard transition. But that 6th day allowed me, I mean, it's going to take longer than 6 days, but at least it gave me that time to be a grieving mom without having to also care for others. So it was a lot of just taking care of myself in that way of just being able to be in my feelings, acknowledging those feelings. And I loved leading the women this year. I'm normally an introvert by nature, so that's why I always am curious. Like, I wonder, am I going to be able to put myself out there and be able to, relate to a lot of the girls or to the ladies, or just in any situation. But this year, my focus was really about ensuring that the girls or the ladies, I always say girls, but the ladies were well aware of what to expect, because it's a really huge race as far as, what to pack, how are we going from camp to camp, but also being aware of, like, majority of us came from the valley, Phoenix, so we're below sea level here, and we're going to be thousands of feet up in Colorado. So just ensuring that their training was going well, just so that their experiences were positive as much as it can be, as far as if there are things that we can avoid, like making sure that we're trained well, making sure they have the essential things. And as far as their running goes, like, that's personal to them. So just making sure that the ladies were taking care of themselves, getting enough rest, and being aware of their bodies, where they're at emotionally. Like, because I know another lady, she had left her family for the first time, kept checking in on her, because I know how hard that was for me too last year. And I just loved watching every single lady go through their transformative days. So 3 of them live here in the valley, so we kind of trained together, so I kind of got to know them very well. And one of them I knew from when she first started really running, and then just seeing her on that 2nd day just conquer that mountain, I was just so proud of her, and just the amount of pride she had was just so awesome to see. And the one lady that had never been away from her family ever, and just seeing that her dedication towards her family be, shown through her passion in running. And one of them, who's a super beast on the trail, it was awesome to see her just like in person, like I see pictures or little clips, but just to witness that was just like so empowering. I'm just like, man, like that's awesome. Like just the amount of strength she had. And then being with Missy the 6 days, you know, like it was just very moving for me to be able to experience that with her. And just to witness, like that girl is all heart when she runs, all heart. And it just, I love seeing that in different people. And if, you know, that allows me to witness these different transformations between the women, like I wouldn't mind leading again, just because it's just so beautiful just to see that, just because I know what it feels like personally to go through these different transitions, but to witness someone else go through it is just so like inspiring.
It is so inspiring to witness other women experience the transformative power of running. I want to thank Wynonna so much for sharing her inspiring story of just how life-changing running has been for her, as well as the women she's had the opportunity to team up with. Thank you, Wynonna. And that does bring us to the end of Wynonna's story on the podcast. And I know that you, like me, will want to keep up with Wynonna, so please look to the show notes where I will provide a link to how you can follow her on social media. And there, you can discover how it all went down for her at her latest adventure, which just took place. Wynonna ran her first 100-miler, that distance that was so inspirational to her from the very, very beginning of her ultra running journey. Huge congratulations to her. You can read all about it on Instagram. In the show notes, I will also provide links to how you can learn more about MMIW, Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women, and I will provide links to information about the boarding schools Wynonna referred to. She was talking about the atrocities of the Native American boarding schools in the United States. And you will also find a link to Native Women Run, so you can learn more about all the great work that they're doing. And remember, if you're going to be running the Chicago Marathon, or you're going to be in the Chicago area over marathon weekend, please come meet the Native Women Run team members who will be running the Chicago Marathon, as well as founder Verna Volker. I will be co-hosting this live event with Cindy Kuzma of the Starting Line 1928 podcast, and we'll be in conversation with these incredible women. That is happening at the Expo on the main stage from 4 to 5 on Saturday, October 12th. Mark your calendars, please. And that is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for listening. I always appreciate you being here. And I always appreciate you sharing the podcast with somebody else who you know will enjoy these stories too. Signing off for now, I am Cherie Louise Turner, the host and producer of Women's Running Stories. And until next Tuesday, I do wish you healthy, joyful strides forward. Women's Running. Women's Running Stories.